Gents.
How's it going, everybody? All right. Good to see you guys. Welcome. I want you guys to welcome our special guest, Traver Boehm. Is that how you pronounce your name, Traver?
Mhm.
I was never sure because I mostly read it and I've heard it a few times. I just want to make sure I've got it. Yeah. So I'm just going to share a little bit about you, and if you want to add anything in there,
Sure.
feel free. So Traver is inspiring millions of men around the world to shift their experience of masculinity by combining the primal masculine with the divine masculine. He's an author of the books Today I Rise and Man Uncivilized, which many of the men in the tribe just have been reading, may have finished by now. He's also a two-time TEDx speaker, storyteller, podcast host, and founder of the Uncivilized Men's Movement, formerly a strength and conditioning coach, CrossFit gym owner, MMA fighter, bodyguard, and still a licensed acupuncturist and avid meditator and mediocre surfer. With a passion for people and a unique lens through which to view the human experience, Traver is a highly sought after transformational coach in the fields of consciousness, relationship, and personal development. Awesome, man. Is there anything you want to add into that that's changed in any way since?
I moved to Colorado, so my surfing's gotten even shittier.
Yeah,
I'll add that.
yeah,
Everything else, it's so interesting to hear your own bio of like, oh yeah, that's right. I ran a gym for a while, or oh
yeah,
yeah, all this stuff happened. I think especially with the year of COVID, where it feels like, oh, but that was another life. That was before all sorts of things happened, and yet here we are. So no, I think that covers it.
yeah. And that's kind of why I ask, because we're always changing and growing, and sometimes I hate listening to the hearing my own bio. It's one of those uncomfortable things for me. Um, so I've really loved your book. It's
Thank
really,
you.
really potent. It kind of just like feels like a powerful call to action for men,
Mm,
and just a manifesto for the modern man that really
mm,
wants to make a difference in the world and show up with a big heart and a
mm.
big purpose. And, um, uh, it really touched me in a deep way because, you know, I, I resonate a lot with what you're trying to create in terms of a movement for men to access, both that primal power and that divine power
Mm,
that both of which I think a lot of men struggle to connect with.
mhm.
And um, yeah, I'd love for you to touch in on that, just to begin this conversation, because I feel like
Sure.
that's a big piece of what you're trying to bring forward in your writing.
Sh-
And
Sure,
yeah,
sure, sure. Yeah. So when I first came into men's work or came into even just looking or asking the question, who am I as a man? I was 40 years old and just had never thought of it. It just wasn't, it wasn't in the conversation. It was like, how do I make more money? How do I buy a house? How do I pay off my car? How do I meet women? How do I yada yada? It was never, how do I define myself in the most basic role that I fulfill on earth, or second most basic after I'm a human, right? It wasn't there. And so when I first started looking for all of this, I seemed to find the two extremes at the time, which was like, come hang out with us for 5 days and we'll turn you into like a pseudo Navy SEAL. Or it was like, come hang out with us and do yoga and eat vegan and meditate and learn how to levitate. And I was like, well, write some poetry. Like, what about like a little of this and a little of that? Where do I find this middle ground? Where do I find, because I had both of those sides in me. I fought professionally. And then I went to acupuncture school, which is a 4-year blistering process of being deeply steeped in the feminine. And, I was probably the only person in that school who didn't take tests with like crystals and all kinds of shit on their desk. I remember coming in, like literally coming in and like bleeding on a quiz once because I'd been training for a fight, 2 hours before, and everybody just staring at me. And I'm thinking, like, that's how I stare at your crystals. So we're all in the same boat here. So I wanted to do this for myself, let alone I hadn't really looked out at the landscape of men yet. It was just like, I want to be like, I want to be able to cut down a tree. I want to be able to know how to change a tire. I want to know how to punt, like throw a right cross. I want to know how to make money. I want to know how to fuck well. And man, I don't know how to express my feelings. I don't even know what my feelings are. I don't know about holding space. I don't know. I don't have a relationship to anything above me. I'm kind of lost here, folks, in the whole man front. And so after putting myself through a process, or, unconsciously putting myself through a process of reading a ton of books, going on the primal workshops, delving into nature, living in the woods for a month in a survival program, locking myself in a pitch black room for a month and seeing, like, okay, what's underneath my name, my title, and who I am. Getting around men, doing the men's work, being in men's circles, I then took a look out at the male world and said, wow, if this has changed my life so drastically, it has to do the same for so many other men. And then looked out at the male world and was like, holy shit, we're not doing well. Like, I think I knew it. Like, I knew men die 10 years earlier. We're higher. Like, there's not a lot of women in prison. We seem to have that. If there's rape, assault, murder, addiction, homelessness, you name it, we're kind of dominating in that area. So it's like, maybe I'm not the only one who has these challenges. And this was not my role, you guys. Like, this was not what I thought I was going to be doing with my life at all. I ran a gym and an acupuncture studio. That's not this. But so I slowly just leaked some stuff out and was like, hey, what if we combine the two? And it was like, guys just came out of the woodwork. Literally, like, inbox full. I had to hire an assistant. It was like, what is going on here? I am not the right. And I would tell people, like, don't talk to me. Like, I'm the acupuncturist gym guy. But then would actually have the conversations and be like, hey man, you know what the problem is in your marriage? It's not her. Even though she may have some work to do, you're not leading. Do you not see that? Do you not see that she's desperate for leadership here? Do you not see that she's desperate for you to be able to speak her language, which is the language of emotion? Do you not see that she's desperate for you to not collapse every time that you talk to her? And I would have these conversations over and over and over, Soma. And it was that magic sentence, you should probably charge for this. I was just taking, like, anybody, like, you message me on Instagram, let's get on the phone. Mm-hmm. And I was like, charge for what? Like, don't you guys see what this is? And realize, wow, oh, you're me 3 years ago when I had no clue what any of this was. And so when I looked out at the world and started talking to all of these men, what I realized was, you are in so much pain. You're in so much. Are we allowed to swear? I know it's on Facebook Live.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can.
Okay. Well, you guys get it. Like, you're in so much fucking pain. Oh, so was I 3 years ago. But no one told me I was allowed to be. Actually, they told me the opposite. Man up. Shut up. Sit back. Stay down. Don't take up much space. You're a perpetrator naturally as a man. This all came about when, like, Me Too was really blossoming. I was like, wow, if so many guys are in just the amount of pain I was, and I had a venue and brothers and a skill set to release it, and now my life has changed drastically in every way, and all for the positive, what would happen if other men were given the opportunity? And then what would happen? How would we give men the opportunity? I have to package and position this in a way that men can understand and men can grasp onto. Fortunately for me, I naturally had both sides, right? I fought and went to school. I, like, had the sensitive side and the masculine side. So it wasn't hard to then just kind of open the channel, not to get too weird, and say, okay, information, boom. It just was nonstop, right? Like I wrote that book in about 6 weeks. It was 18 hours a day, like pissing in a Gatorade bottle, just sitting here, just like boom, 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 not eating for, like I go a whole day without eating. Like, holy shit, I haven't eaten anything. 3 days without leaving the house. But it was just like, it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was also just so necessary, right? Like
Yeah.
when guys read it and go, oh, I've read that. I literally have guys every day say, this is the 4th time I'm reading your book. This is the 8th time I've listened to the audio. I was like, really? Oh, you're right. Like we're so desperate for real,
Mm-hmm.
for uncensored truth. I'm not going to whitewash this. I'm not going to water it down. That's why I wrote it for men. I can say the F word over and over. I can be like, you got to fucking wake up. And like try to punch guys in the face, because we need that aggression to stop us in our tracks long enough to go, oh, wow, I'm in a ton of pain. That's fascinating. Huh. I'm numbing my pain in all of these. He's right. Actually, I'm not in this hamster wheel of just like, well, I'll take care of that next weekend. But you know what? Like, I can't talk to the guys about that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really want to do this. People make fun of me. I can't have that conversation. And we all feel so isolated, right? One of my, Connor Beaton, I imagine, the guy who
Mm-hmm.
runs Man Talks, his
Yeah.
famous line, like, the first rule of Man Club is we don't talk about Man Club. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right. We don't talk to each other about our pain. We don't get below the surface of cars, pussy, football, whatever it is. We're not like, hey, I'm hurting. We may in these groups, but the average guy off the street is gonna be like, I'm not talking to my buddies. I'm not even gonna admit that. It's not even real. I just drink a lot, smoke a lot of dope, jerk off to a lot of porn for whatever, because that's what guys do. Not because, man, I am still so messed up about my parents' divorce, my divorce, the heartbreak, the accident, the whatever it is. So I feel like I'm getting off track here.
Well, it's all good stuff, though. I'm glad that you are.
Yeah.
One thing that you touched on, which I think is really important, and part of my encouragement, especially men in this smaller community, the bigger community, the men that are listening live on Facebook, is it's about community, and it's about having these spaces where we can bring our shit, and speak our truth. And even with those spaces, and I'm speaking for myself too. I've been doing men's work for like 17 years now, and um, it's still an edge for me to be vulnerable. It's still an edge for me to share the deepest truth in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to hear your perspective on the value of brotherhood, of the value of having men in your life
Mm-hmm.
that you trust. Maybe not only to be vulnerable, which is a great thing to, great muscle to build, but also to hold us accountable, to
Mm-hmm.
see our higher selves, and to not let us get away with playing small.
Sure, sure, sure. I don't know if you did, but I didn't grow up with any brothers, like biological or blood brothers, right? So I never
Two
had
older brothers.
someone teach me the ways. You have 2 older, okay. No
Yeah.
one taught me the ways of the world from a man's perspective or a male perspective. I do remember being 12, 13 and having like a little skateboard gang, and that was awesome. And then something usually happens around that age, junior high, high school, when we went from girls, who wants to hang out with girls, to that's my competition. He's my competition. He's my competition. He's my competition. That guy gets the girl and I don't. Okay, you've all shifted from my little squad where I can tell you all my stuff to I now have to posture up, pretend I have no humanity, ignore my pain, ignore my reality, ignore my truth, and just compete with you. And that gets perpetuated and continued. And then at some point, when men get around men, conscious men get around a group of men, and the energy in the room drops, and you realize, holy shit, these guys are going through the exact same experience I am. maybe different flavors of it, right? Like that guy's got a business challenge, that guy's got an addictive challenge, that guy's got a marital challenge. And yet I can see myself in each one of those guys because I've had addictive challenges, marital challenges, business challenges. It's like there's only a handful of real challenges. And when you get around a group of guys, I think the masculine energy dropping, the competition dropping, it actually, for the first time for so many of us, feels like a sense of home. It feels safe. And I'm going to speak heteronormatively here, but if it's a group full of men, no one's competing for the one woman. No one's competing. Like if you take 50 dudes and put one woman in the room, it changes the entire dynamic. If you take 50 dudes and just leave it at that, no one's posturing or lying or holding back 1% in order to impress her. It's like our sex drive is so high biologically that we can almost not help but do that. So
Yeah.
when we actually realize like these guys just want to help and support me, there's no agenda, there's no weird, there's nothing else but that. I think for so many of us, it was for me, Soma, like the first time in ages where I went, oh, I get to be exactly who I am. I can tell you guys all the worst stuff I've done, all the stuff I'm ashamed of, I have guilt over, the things I really wish I didn't do, because guess what? You've done 99% of them too. Right? I used to always do this experiment when, especially with a new group of guys, like anytime it's guys who haven't done this work, it's like, okay, raise your hand if you've ever had an issue with alcohol. And you see guys kind of like look, and like a couple hands go up. And then what do you know? Most of the hands go up. Like, okay, raise your hand if you've ever had an issue with drugs. Again, like looking around, it takes that first guy's hand to go up. Then 80% of the hands go up, whatever, has had some issue with it. Then here's the kicker. I'm like, what about with porn? And then instantly there's like the really looking like who's going to put his hand up first, right? And someone's hand goes up and then 100% of the hands go up. And then I ask this is the $1 million question. How many of you thought you were going to be the only one who put your hand up when I asked any of those three questions? And every fucking hand goes up. Which is this weird like amnesia of humanity that men have that think like, I'm the only guy who's ever had an issue with drinking. I'm the only guy who's ever had an issue with drugs. I'm the only guy who's ever gotten divorced. I'm the only guy who's ever had an issue with porn. I'm the only guy who couldn't get it up once when I was having sex. It's like, it's for some reason we're wired to believe it's only us. And just the fact of seeing all those other hands instantly reminds us like, oh, we get to be human. Oh, it's okay. You don't have to be Superman every moment of every day. That's not the ticket to this life that someone's trying to sell you. We actually get to relate now. Cool. We're all about the same. Okay, cool. Hands down. Let's have some real conversation. So I think it's vital, brother. I think it's wildly vital, right? I spend so much of my day talking to women who have partners who didn't have a male role model, who don't have male friends, who don't have men's groups. And it's I don't want to say it's cliche, but it's so easy to see where they're at. And then these women are saying like, well, how do I teach him this? I'm like, you can't. Please, and don't try. One, you're not his damn mother. And if it's most likely going to come across as you trying to be his mother. Two, you don't have the thing. Like, I can't teach women how to be women at all. Like, I would never try. Imagine me being like, well, so the menstrual cycle, right? Like, and I studied the menstrual cycle for like a year in grad school, but I'd be like, I can't, ask me what it feels like. And I'm really good with words. Couldn't come within a country mile of it. So I think that too, it's like we talk to each other about us. That right there, the brotherhood, the shared humanity, they're like, oh, I'm not alone in this. That is 90% of the work. That is 90% of the healing. That is 90% of the medicine. Then it's, okay, what are you going to do with yourself? You only got like 80 years here. If you're a dude, it's like 76. What are you going to do with yourself? Why are you here? What is this vision that you want to bring into the world? I'm your brother now. Remember, I'm not your competition. I'm not going to steal your idea. I'm not going to tell you it's stupid. I'm not going to cut you down because you're trying to improve. How do I support you? You should talk to my friend so and so. He helps with stuff like he does the same thing you do. And it's like, oh, we're all on the same team. Totally forgot about that or never knew. So I think that's where it's both the healing part. We get hurt in relationship, we heal in relationship. Right? Michael Gay says that, Dewey Freeman says that. So many of my therapist friends say that. And yet so many of us, what's the male thing? The first rule of men's club, you don't talk about men's club. So how are we supposed to heal in relationship if we're like, I got this all on my own? It doesn't work. And then how do we build? You've built a business. I built businesses. I'll tell you what, I did not do it by myself. Even if I'm the head and the CEO, whatever I want to call myself, didn't do it all by myself. So having men is vital in that regard,
Yeah,
in both regards.
totally with you on that. Yeah, the tagline for the Essential Man is the age of the lone wolf is over. So
It's over. The paradigm's over, man.
But sometimes it does feel like kind of herding cats in a way, trying to get men like, come on, like there's some good shit here. Um, and I will say, the women that have a partner that's isolated, cut off, it never works for them. What I've seen is it never works to like sign their guy up for a program. It needs to be, you know, I find it usually requires a man going through something really painful and difficult for him to recognize, oh, maybe I could use some help here.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it rarely does. I've said to women, send them, and I know this isn't a sales pitch, but like send them my book, send them to my Instagram page, send them to you, send them to one of these 8 dudes, and just have him look at the stuff. If he doesn't like it, okay, but you can't teach it to him, right? I will share with you guys a really fast story. I did a workshop I co-led with Connor, with the guy who runs Man Talks, and he's all about shadow work. So this is like guys crying and screaming and like punching the pillows and like all of that deep, deep, intense work over the course of the weekend. And it was like one man in the middle. He would be in the middle for about 45 minutes to an hour. And we worked through 12 men over the course of 3 days. And finally, there's one last guy. And he's been quiet. He hasn't said much. He's kind of stared straight ahead the whole time. And this is intense work, right? Like it's real deep work. And finally, Connor's like, so how do you feel about being here and all of this? And he goes, I got to tell you guys, my wife signed me up for this and she didn't tell me a single thing. She just said, show up at this address at this time. And we're like, oh, no wonder you have looked like you've watched a horror movie for the last 3 days and have just sat here in terror. So yeah, women listening to this, please don't do that. Like, please don't send some poor guy into the minefield of shadow work.
Yeah, that's pretty funny and not surprising.
Yeah.
So one thing that I've heard you talk about and you bring up in the book, um, I think this concept that your gifts grow in the garden of your wounds. And um, yeah, it's a concept that I try to speak to, and it's not always an easy thing to put words to, but really so vital, especially in terms of, a lot of men come to me like wanting more of a sense of purpose and like what they're here to do. and and it's almost, I think a lot of men come into doing inner work from a place of like, how can I get rid of this pain? Like, how can I escape it because it's uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm.
And um, in my experience, we usually need to go into it and to get into relationship with it in order to retrieve what the gifts are there. And I'd love to hear from you on that and your
Sure.
experience. Yeah.
I think in the West, we are addicted to the love and light concept, right? We're addicted to it. That if you're momentarily depressed, there's something wrong. If you're in pain, there's something wrong. We need to immediately fix this. Watch a football game and then watch the commercials. It's like big toe pain, take this pill, right? This thing going wrong with your life, take this. And yet there's so much information on the other side of the love and light. So I came to this truly because when I was going through my own dark night of the soul, I was going through a divorce and all of this shit at the same time, a business closing, a miscarriage, like real dark shit. I was very fortunate to have a Jungian therapist at the time, or I found a Jungian therapist. And I remember him telling me, think about the earth, think about muck, think about like the deep, dark shit down below. That's where gems grow. That's where you actually find really, really rich nutrients. That's where you find the deepest and most truest things. And I was like, wow, no one ever told me that. I thought I was just supposed to like tell myself that this pain was the greatest thing that ever happened to me and someday it would be gone and yay and here and celebrate it as opposed and get rid of it as fast as possible. And so he really had me just sit in it. And I didn't know at the time, even the concept, if you read any of Francis Weller's work, of the Negrado, right? Mm-hmm. The same idea. And yet I can tell you guys that 6 years ago, last weekend, I went from being an acupuncturist and gym owner and fairly successful at both, but also really successful at drinking, smoking pot, looking at porn, working out twice a day, not sleeping, being addicted to 50 other things. And then finding the deepest, darkest pain of my life. And out of that came everything that I'm doing now. An international men's movement, 2 books, 3 more on the way that I just need to write. TED Talks, workshops all over the world, an amazing, amazing, amazing life, a message that resonates with so many men. But I would be lying to your face if I said that my journey wasn't born out of pain. And I am so glad that when everything fell apart, the very first thing I did was quit drinking. Because there was this whisper in my ear that I don't know where it came from. And I'm not like a out there guy. I don't see a lot of visions and any of that shit. But the whisper was like, don't you dare waste 1 ounce of this pain. Like, don't you dare. Because if you learn to use all of this, if you alchemize it, if you sit in it, if you let it reorganize your DNA and like marinate you, something will be incredible will come out of it. And I remember hearing that and being like, you know what? I'm at rock bottom here, so I'm open to any suggestions. Okay, I'll try this. I'll try it. I'll try your way, whoever's whispering, and not do what a number of people at the time told me, which was, bro, let's go out. Let's go get wasted. Let's go fuck a bunch of women. You'll feel better. And I was literally going to my doctor and finding out I was getting divorced. Like, oh, do you want an antidepressant? I was like, no, I'm supposed to be depressed. I'm going through a divorce, you dummy. Like, don't take this away from me. I don't want to just wake up 5 years from now in a drug-fueled haze and be like, well, the divorce wasn't so bad, and have learned nothing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a masochist, you guys. Like, I swear to God, I'm not telling you, like, don't go crash your car and break up with your chick and be like, cool. Like, now I'm going to figure out my purpose. But realize that there is a marination that happens when you're in the low points. There is a marination that happens, an alchemization, a reorganization that happens when you're in pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for guys looking for their purpose, Soma, right? Like, how did I know? I'm talking to men. What was my biggest challenge? Was how I was showing up in my life as a man. So I always tell guys, like, when you're really like the ones who are like, I have no purpose, I don't know what to do. I wish I could just tell you. I'm like, well, there's a whisper. And look, there's no whispers. Like, okay, go back and figure out where your life has fallen apart. Go back and figure out the really dark times. How did you get yourself out of that? That's I guarantee you, if you look there, there's information about what you're going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
I think I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I'm glad you shared a little bit more about that, and I think that we our culture is one that um, drives men to seek outwardly primarily, and to constantly consume and fill every space of our our attention with media or substances or food or whatever. And no wonder men struggle to hear their inner voice, or those quieter, more subtle things that are trying to get their attention.
Mhm.
And I think that's why the pain gets so loud at certain points, right? It's like, wake the fuck up.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. My buddy Asher Packman, if you know him, he runs the big men's organization in Australia. He gave me this concept: the feather, the brick, and the freight train. He's like, and that's how the universe talks to you. It's first like, hey, this may not work out for you so well, and you're like, nah, I'm a dude, you can handle that. And then it's like, oh, was that a brick? Wow, that's a DUI. Maybe I should stop drinking. Like, but big party this weekend. I can't skip football season. Oh, now I have liver cancer. Okay, that's the freight train. Okay, now I need to do some different shit with my life. And unfortunately, you said it. Most men wait for the freight train, right? Where once those of us who have gotten hit by the freight train start to look for the feathers, and like, could be a feather. Oh, feels like a brick coming. Okay, I need to make some adjustments here. I need to talk about something. I need to share with my group. I need to talk to my men. I need to look inward and be like, do I really want this? I need to do that work. But yeah, I hear you. It's we're so conditioned out of. Here's something else to say, especially in the West. We are so conditioned out of realizing how sensitive we are as humans, as men, right? When I asked Michaela Boehm, and if you guys want to look her up, if you don't know her work, one of my biggest mentors. So, like, the woman who knows more shit about men than anybody I know. When I said, what is the one thing you wish men knew? I wish you guys knew how sensitive you are. I was like, wow, that is not what I was expecting. And how many guys can resonate with that? How many guys have ever been given permission to be sensitive? That's like the one thing we get shamed for and beat up for and punched for as kids. Don't be so damn sensitive. Right? It's the thing we say to women afterwards. Like, don't be so damn sensitive. And yet we're denying our very nature. And that which we suppress comes out sideways. Show me a case where that's not true, and I'll show you an anomaly. And so when we suppress our sensitivity, we have to, as you said, we have to wait for the damn freight trains. We have to wait for the pain to be so overwhelming that we actually look at it.
Yeah. So I think that's a really great thing to unpack a little bit more. I find that the men drawn to working with me probably are a little bit more on that sensitive end of the spectrum. They're probably even aware of it, to some degree. Um, and you touch in a little bit around nice guys, and I think there's a connection there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'd love for you to speak to kind of holding that polarity or tension between, like, owning our sensitivity and how the world is impacting us, while you know carrying out some of the maybe more traditional archetypal roles of men,
Mm,
are that more primal side, the kind of warrior protector energy, and how those things can coexist in a
mm.
healthy way.
Beautiful question. I have a very highly commented on public article. It says the world wants more vulnerable men. I do not, and yet I do. But here's what's underneath that vulnerability. Here's what's underneath that sensitivity is a foundation of strength, a foundation of the primal. I dropped out of my first year of acupuncture school because I realized in that time how sensitive this medicine was, how quiet this medicine was, how feminine this medicine was. I went immediately, dropped out, flew to Thailand and fought, trained Muay Thai and fought, came back to the US and fought professionally for a year in MMA. And people were like, that was the weird thing you did. I said, yes, to me, I wouldn't feel like I had permission to be so engaged in something so quiet, yin, feminine, whatever you want to call it, without knowing that I'd done some shit in the masculine world, in the hyper masculine, in the most masculine of the most masculine world. So I'm not advocating that guys go out and start fighting MMA, but I'm saying when you have a foundation underneath you of the primal, of actual physical power, of power in your chest, not just power in your arms. When you have that foundation, you give yourself permission to be sensitive and vulnerable in a world that will try to puncture you for being so. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to know. I think it's like we've tried to move ourselves away from the primal here in the West, right? That like, oh, like we survive on these guys. Like I can get food here while we're interviewing by pushing 3 buttons. On some level, I'm not comfortable with that. All we have to look at is a simple natural disaster anywhere in the world. And let's stay in the West. I don't know if you guys remember Katrina, the Hurricane Katrina.
Mm-hmm.
All hell broke loose. People were robbing, stealing, raping, killing, like left and loot. Everything went to shit. And that was like within 24 hours. So on some level, I think men need to walk around knowing whatever that Katrina is, I've got shit handled underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's why the first half of the book was fight and fuck. It was primal. Hey, get out in nature. Recreate, reorient yourself, re-engage your relationship with the natural world, because this is a lie. And this can go away. I'll just lose power. I know people that if they lose their internet, they will starve to death because they literally have no other way of getting food. And that's got to be unsettling on some level. Maybe not here. They're not walking around and be like, man, I hope the internet doesn't go out today or I'm going to starve. But on some level in here, that's how they feel. Just like on some level, they feel that things can be taken away from them physically. And so engage in your body, engage in the primal, engage in your purpose. Masculinity has a lot of flavors to it. It doesn't have to look one way. But I believe that it's twofold. It is outward bound. It is leadership based. It is protect, provide. And it's also got a divine aspect. It can heal. It can nurture. It can feel. And one is not more important than the other. Having skill sets in both arenas is what we call wholeness. It's individuation. It is the dark and the light, the yin and the yang, whatever we want to say, the alpha and the omega. Wholeness is what we're all after. And most likely, if guys are on the sensitive edge, beautiful, then there's so much medicine and information in the primal. Just like I can go talk to a bunch of power lifters, CrossFitters, fighters, and they're good in that arena. But I'm like, hey, can you meditate for 5 minutes? Can you close your eyes and sit there with your own thoughts and your own being for 5 minutes? You can't? Whew. Think of how much juice is in that side of the coin then, right? Like learning, and if any of us, I don't know what your guys' skill sets are, but if I threw a new skill at you, you would learn so much about yourself. You would learn so much about relationship, so much about intimacy, so much about business, so much about everything just from learning that new skill. because there's a carryover and you're deficient in some capacity in that skill or in that arena. So again, I'm going to come back to, if Katrina hits Colorado tomorrow, I'm going to be okay. It's going to be tough, but I know I'm going to be okay. So I never worry about that.
Yeah.
Therefore, I give myself permission to cry watching Queer Eye. Don't give a fuck. First of all, it's a great show. Second of all, I don't care. Right. And I think it comes from, and I know a lot of guys who are like, yeah, when I really felt confident in the world and who I was, I gave myself an allowance for the full range of emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like the masculine structure that we develop can hold our own feminine, our own emotional body in a way.
You said it. You took my entire 7-minute spiel and said it in one sentence.
Yeah. So, and it's, I mean, to me, it's something that's constantly on my mind, probably for the last 20 years. You know, eventually our economic system ain't gonna last, I don't think. Maybe it will, but um, I mean, even in the last few weeks, there's threat of civil war, right? And I think it's really crucial that men start considering um, that the things that we think we can be dependent and reliant on really aren't that reliable. And
100%. Didn't COVID teach all of us that, Soma?
yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
It taught all of us that. And it comes down to a sense of safety. That is at the core of, if someone feels safe, they express themselves emotionally. You're allowed to express yourself emotionally. And yet here we are in the most and if you guys aren't in the US, the most unsettled time we've ever had, where the structures that we believed in just were, the social contracts got thrown out the window. And so on some level, we've become a little more tribal. Look at gun sales since February, right? They're through the roof.
Yeah.
You can't get certain ammo in this country. You can't get it. What does that tell you? It tells me people are scared. It tells me also there's a resurgence to the primal. I was on the phone the other day with a guy who runs a spearfishing outfit out of Mexico. And he's like, I have never been busier. Like, guys are interested in spearfishing. Like, we teach them how to just get food out of the ocean.
Mhm.
It's not the luxury spearfishing. I imagine hunting is the exact same way. Trapping is the exact same way. Out survival schools, exact same way. People suddenly got that first the blip of like, oh, my favorite shit's not in the supermarket anymore. That means all the shit in the supermarket could not be here tomorrow. I never saw that. In my 44 years on this earth, I never walked down a toilet paper aisle until last year and saw it empty. I never walked down a pasta aisle and saw it empty in the US. I saw that this year, and that was not unsettling to my brain. That told my stomach, okay, you got to figure out some different ways to get food. Let's just handle this. Let's look at this. You don't have to go full on native, living in the woods, killing everything that moves. Yet it's probably a pretty good idea to figure out some other ways. A couple months ago, I went up to Wyoming and shot a bison.
Wow.
Just to go, okay, guess what? Me and 4 other guys have about 150 pounds of meat each. Cool. We skinned it, we cleaned it, we processed it, we did it all. Just to go, yeah. One, I want to know that my freezer's full because of through the election, because God knows what jackassery would take place. And 2, I actually want to have a relationship with the food I'm eating. I think at this point in humanity, it's time for that. And 3, if I can do this with a couple other men and go, you guys are my bison guys.
Mm-hmm.
It gets weird. We're coming back up here. Cool. And
Right.
and I don't hope that happens. I don't think that's going to happen. Like Whole Foods stayed open all through the pandemic when people are like, oh my God, it's the worst here in America. I'm like, Whole Foods is still open. You can still get like organic grass fed ghee. We're doing okay on the food supply, but yet knowing here's another option was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you touched on something that I wanted to tie back into the beginning of our conversation, just around, you know, resilience, and it's not always about what can we do alone, but what how much more can we do together? And when, especially when shit hits the fan, like who are your people? Who is your tribe? Who are the people that you can go to? Because, you know, communities, you know, in indigenous cultures, there was nobody survived by themselves ever, you know.
Ever.
um, and so it's definitely, I mean, that's the first thing that came to me when COVID hit, is like, where are my people at? You know, who are the people that I could go off into the woods with if I need to?
Mm-hmm.
Our town gets ransacked or something. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but it's definitely something to put on your radar, like building those, building that resiliency in your relationships, and
For
that's
sure.
a whole other skill set.
For sure. And so it doesn't even have to be, this is a pandemic, right? This was a really unique year last year was to live through. My men's group went from meeting once every 3 weeks to every week. And I can't tell you how valuable it was to know I've got these guys. And I can't imagine what it would have been like to try to do that entire process alone. And not just a pandemic. One of the guys in our group, his wife just gave birth to a kid. There was a little bit of challenge in the first 48 hours with its health. He was getting messages on the hour from multiple men a day. Hey, we got you. Hey, you're going to get through this. Hey, anything we're in, you're handled. We have you. You are loved. You're thought of. You need food. What do you need? And I can't imagine how much different that would have been for him just to sit there alone. And then how many men are going through their entire lives, never even hearing once, hey, I got you. I got you. You're good. It's okay. You can take a breath. I got you. And you're doing great, by the way. You're kicking ass. Fucking love you. Not even hearing none of that through this expansive time, years, decades of their lives, and how different their lives would be just to know that someone's there. They're not alone. They're not going through their shit alone. They're not going through the hardest times alone. I was so fortunate when I found out I was getting divorced. I wasn't in the men's world, but my two best friends were like, when do you want us to get on a plane? Right. And thinking how much, like, what a privilege, what a luxury. How many guys are like, okay, this thing happened. I've got a bottle of Jack Daniels and a pistol. These are my options, or this is my coping mechanism. What am I going to do?
Hmm.
And for guys hearing that, like, well, that's kind of an extreme example. That's so many men.
Yeah.
They're having little COVIDs every day, little pandemics every day. Their lives are just these little cycles of being alone and unsupported while crisis happens. And yet we look at the male world and go like, holy shit, our suicide rates are like through the roof. Why is that? Our addiction rates are through the roof. Our obesity rates are through the roof. Our everything is through the roof. Why is that? Because no one's, or very few people have the luxury of picking up a phone and hearing like, hey man, I know you're in the shit and you're going to get through it. And we're here for you. And I'm here for you. You got brothers. All right. You cool? Cool. I'll check back in with you in 30 minutes. Very different experience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in a couple of minutes here, I want to open it up to the group that's live on the call. We're going to
Sure.
go down to the Facebook community, but just for the men that are listening in live on Facebook, maybe you can close with um, just what you consider essentials for the modern man to like survive, not just in like, you know, on that primal level, but, you know, like what is the modern world asking of men so that they can not just survive but thrive and contribute
Mm,
and not go down that hole of depression and suicide and all of that.
mm. It's a great question. I'm going to frame this two ways. The first is, are you leading in every area of your life consciously? If you're not, are you consciously not leading? Are you leading or being led? That's question one. In every area of your life. And there's certain areas of my life I don't lead. I have a bookkeeper. I don't lead with numbers. They're not my gift. So I led by hiring a bookkeeper. But are you leading in your relationship? Is there a challenge in your relationship? What are you doing to work on it? That's leadership. Number two, what are your wounds and what are you doing to heal them? Most men are walking around ticking time bombs because we have no concept that the shit that happened to us in the early years of our lives and even in the later years of our lives can still be informing our behaviors, our patterns, or whatever they are. So are you leading or being led? What are your wounds and what are you doing to heal them? And I'm going to add in the three, I call them the three relentlesses from the book, right? Relentless number one. Are you relentless at bringing your unique vision into the world? And into the world, by into the world, I could mean into your home. This does not have to be on Oprah. This does not have to be on a TED stage. This does not have to be a New York Times bestseller. How do you want your world to look? How do you want to look, feel, act in it? Who do you want to be in it? Where does it want to take place? What do you want to, what about you? Like, why the fuck are you here? And how are you bringing that thing into the world? Relentless number one. Relentless number two, relentlessly pursuing growth. Everybody on this call already is doing that, right? I wish I could clone myself into like 19 more me's. I would like send one of me to jujitsu all day. One of me would go to the library. One of me would go to cooking school. One of me would finally figure out how to play that damn guitar. One of me would learn Spanish. One of me would probably go surfing. Like, how would I, like, God, grow? Figure you only get a little bit of time here, man. And there's more information now than ever before. What are you doing to take yourself up a notch? Number three, relentlessly bringing value to your relationships. How are people benefited just from knowing you? I have a team of people that work for me. I am so invested. The very first question I ask them on every phone call, how are you as a human? Not how are you as my marketing woman? How are you as my designer? How are you as my assistant? How are you as my head of this? How are you? How can I help you? Then I ask them, like, what the hell's going on with the marketing? What the hell's going on with this? With my with my girlfriend, I've actually sat down and thought, why am I with her? What am I bringing to her? What do I want from her in return? With my friends, I'm trying to think, how do I support them? I ask them straight up, hey, how do I support you? And here's the most important value to relationship with the person in the mirror, with the man in the mirror.
Mm.
Like, what are you doing with that guy? Do you like him? Do you love him? Are you proud of him? How are you taking care of that man? That's what I think the world is looking from us, man. Like,
Yeah.
we have outsourced so much stuff to the feminine. We have ignored our wounds, and therefore we're running around acting like psychopaths.
Yeah.
We don't know why we're here. So many of us have given up. We've collapsed. We've gone, man, we've heard it. We don't need men. We don't need men. We don't need men. Yeah, we do need men. We need you. We don't
Mm.
need you to stand in front of the hut with a spear and protect everybody. We may not need your paycheck to buy food for the family. We need your heart. We need your presence. We need your genius, whatever it is, whatever this thing is that you have to give to the world. We need your gift now more than ever. If you, I don't know, again, I'm speaking to maybe some Americans. Look at the country. We are so divided, so angry, so split, so hurt, so traumatized by men. I'm not blaming anybody, but saying, hey, the symbol for my movement, the actual symbol was the male symbol, half the symbol for poison, half the symbol for the antidote to poison. That is masculinity to me. The potential to be a fucking disaster and destroy things. The potential to actually heal. That's what we're looking. We need to recognize that we have the ability to burn shit down real fast and real easy, and start owning the fact that we have the ability to heal and build things back up, and start doing that.
Wow. Yeah. Really, really powerful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good answer. All right, I'm gonna say goodbye to Facebook family and close it down for this smaller group here. If you guys listening on Facebook are interested in taking a deeper dive with some of the guests that I have inside our membership community, you can join the tribe and check it out on the links on the Facebook page. Thanks for listening. All right. How's it going, gentlemen? Maybe I'm gonna put it to gallery view so we can see everybody. I don't know if you can put your video on, Stephen, but it'd be great to see you if possible. Um, Looks like Sky got a haircut since the last time I saw him. Um, so this is your time, gentlemen. I don't know if any questions for Traver came to mind that you want to bring. Anything, I think the most value that you guys could probably get from having Traver here is to really bring something personal that you're struggling with in your life. Any maybe some of the things that he's called forward in his book that feel challenging for you. I'd love to open that up.
Hi, Steven. Good to see you.
Hey guys, yeah, I'm on my phone because I was coming in, so my green screen doesn't work quite as well without the virtual background. But listen, man, I loved your book. I listened to the audio version. I'd heard you on Mark Groves and maybe another podcast as well. I'm always saying a lot of good things. There's just honestly so many nuggets I've taken. The thing that I got from your book that really resonated with me is that integrity is your thoughts and your actions and your words all in alignment. And it really helped me to see ways that I was out of alignment before, and I'm sure I still am in some ways. It's an ongoing process.
Me too.
But yeah,
Yeah.
right. But what you just said about the feather, the brick, and the freight trade, man, that really hit home for me. Look, I'm going through a bunch of my own shit, relationship drama. I recently, within the last 2 months, stopped with both alcohol and weed, and I'm hoping it's a life change. I hope to have the 6 years and look back and say, it's inspiring for me to hear you say that. And I felt exactly the same way of, I'm going through some serious pain. It was the wake up call I needed to get out of that kind of stagnant life of comfort, because I wasn't going to hit rock bottom. Like, things weren't that bad from like an objective societal point of view, but
Sure.
it's like that pain, that personal pain that came in was, I don't want to waste an ounce of it. I feel you on that. Alchemize it and make something useful. So, for me, smoking weed was escaping the pain. I'd be wasting it if I was doing that. So, any tips you had on when you're feeling that pain, how do you kind of bear down on that and make it useful instead of wasting it? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Such a great question. And I'll preface it by saying that even though I know what to do, I still am like, I don't want to fucking do this. Why won't it go away? The humanity part, I don't think ever leaves. Some of the best things I've learned to do are, one, have a dialogue with it. And so I know, and let's just get weird, right? Like, I love the journal prompt. If my pain could speak to me today, it would say, if my pain could speak to me right now, what would it want me to know? And then I'm a writer, so I just keep going. Or, and this may sound even weirder, you guys, but you're in a men's group, so you're into a little bit, weird's okay. I've interviewed pain. on a voice note. So I'll put a voice note on my phone and be like, okay, all right, writing's too slow. What do you want me to know? And I'll listen and be like, you know what? Remember the first time she broke up with you? Yeah, you probably shouldn't have married her after that. I'm like, damn it, you're right. Don't marry people who say they don't love you. Fuck, thanks, Payne. That was really good. Or dropping it down a level of, Stephen, where else has this shown up before? Right? Like, is this mirroring a relationship you, and I'm not a child psychologist by a country mile, yet it's pretty easy to see that I had the exact same relationship with my ex-wife that I had with my parents or my mom. What do you know? Oh, I have to start dropping it down and getting to the root of it. So, but for the practice, I think two things: ritual. So not just leaving it up to like, I don't know, maybe today it'll do it. Like, oh, woke up, have this thing. I know I'm going to go do some breath work. I know I'm going to meditate, do breath work, and journal in that order. Like, calm the day. Usually the breath work ends up in crying. Okay, what was the crying trying to tell me? We still, like, Soma nailed it. We need the structure. Like, I know women who are like, I feel pain. One day I may take a bath. I know pain. I may do this. I'm like, I'm a dude. Tell me what to do. Okay. Meditate, breath work, journal. And if possible, and this is so hard, share it with another guy. Just reach out and be like, hey, man, today's not my best day. Would love like 5 minutes of your time. And just dump it. Like, you know what? I'm in the middle of the breakup. Or what are you going through, if I may ask? Are you getting divorced? You going through a breakup?
Hopefully not getting divorced, but it's still up in the air. And honestly, it's the limbo of that and not knowing and that uncertainty. And I've been in control of everything my whole life. Fancied that I was in control of this, and the wake up call that I'm absolutely not in control of this. And dealing with the ego of that and all other stuff, just kind of shedding, has been both the best experience of my life, but also the worst experience of my life at the same time. And so it's a big question mark, every day I don't know. And not being attached to the outcome and working on my progress. A lot of the stuff you said resonated. Soma's guided me in a lot of those directions. I do have the fortunate, ability of a lot of other, men in my life who are strong, who I can lean on in this time. But I appreciate all the wisdom. Listening to your book as I'm going through this is like doubly valuable, and I'll probably listen to it again when I'm not going through this to see the stuff that's not as much like when the fires are going.
Yeah. I feel for you, man. My ex-wife took off in January and didn't file until September. And all those 9 months was spirit. Like, I don't know. The universe hasn't told me whether we should get back together again. And I'd be like slamming my head on the desk of like, the universe, fuck the universe. Are you coming back or are you leaving? Are you divorcing me or not? And it wasn't until two things happened. And I love control. Like,
Yeah, don't we all?
it's a really good friend of mine. Realizing how powerless I was in that situation. So again, two things. One, when you want something and you have to let go of the outcome of it, that's a polarity. That's a duality. It's in the book, right? That anytime you have a duality, there's a tremendous amount of energy that flows back and forth between the two. So you have the opportunity to tap into that energy. Number two, this was the question I never wanted to answer in that 9 months, but when I could, everything changed. What will you do with or without her? What are you building with or without her? Whether she comes back or she leaves, what are you here for? What is your life going to look like? What are you bringing into the world? And I'd be like, yeah, I can't answer that until I know she comes back. Dig a little deeper. And really, it was like, you know what? I'm going to live an amazing fucking life.
Yeah,
I'm going to
either
write
way.
books.
And
I'm going to give
Soma's
talks.
pushing me on that too. That's really good advice.
And last piece, that's super attractive. And
Yeah.
I hope from my heart, if this is truly meant to be and she's who you want to be with, that attracts her back. What you need to know, which you may be like, fuck you, bro, I don't care, is even if it doesn't, it will attract someone different who is also in alignment with the work that you've done. Right? The thing that I never understood until it happened was that so often the walkaway spouse or walkaway partner comes back, the one that's like, hey, I'm out of here. They come back, but you've done so much work because you have so much pain that when they do come back, you're like, I know I fought for you to come back, but I got to be honest. We're not really a good, I'm up here now. And it's not a like superiority thing. It's what was okay a year ago, that's not okay right now. And you got to, now your job is the one to tell me why you should come back, why I should let you back as opposed to doing all the work to get you back. So,
Totally. I mean,
yeah,
I think
stay on this,
the
brother.
key takeaways for me are, you know, the self-work, the better yourself for the sake of yourself, regardless of outcome. Don't be attached to outcome.
Yeah.
And at some point, some of these answers may be written, but for me, it's just accepting that the answer isn't written yet and that I can't just seek harder to find it. I just have to be okay with the uncertainty. And, you know, and the more I try to push, it's like getting George R. R. Martin, harassing him to finish the book. It's like he's more likely to write it the way you don't want it. Just leave the damn man alone. At some point, it'll be written. Work on your damn self.
Exactly. And you said, I hope alcohol and pot is for the rest of my life. Make that decision. The
Yeah, I mean, I
single
think
best decision I made was to quit drinking.
I have made the decision. You
Yeah.
know, it's just hasn't been long enough for me to even trust myself totally on it. It doesn't seem like it'll be a problem the next day or the next day, but I'm like, what about in 2 years after the pandemic's done and everyone's drinking margaritas? Will I be strong enough? I hope so.
Sure. Yeah. The process of eliminating those substances, you're going to keep seeing benefits, right? I think for the first 3 years, I was like, wow, my meditations are different. My ability to walk into a room and read people is different. How I am in the bedroom is different. At the 5-year, 6-year mark, I kind of have forgotten about it. It was like, oh yeah, people still drink. I forget about that. I actually said that the other day, looking at the people rushing the Capitol. I was like, oh, I wonder if a bunch of them were drinking. And my friend was like, of course they were drinking, you idiot. People drink everywhere. But I was like, oh, yeah, I forget people still do that. It's like, oh, yeah, there's a line outside McDonald's. That's the weirdest thing. What are those people going to do? Oh, they still eat that shit. That's right. That's right. So stay on the path, brother. I appreciate you chiming in and being honest about what you're going through. And also, as a man in the men's world, thank you for not going, oh, problem with my partner. Let me just go fuck 5 women, drink a case of beer, go get in a fight at the supermarket, shoot up a school, or do all the stupid shit that men do. So I honor you for actually sitting there and taking that pain.
Well, thank you, brother, for sharing your story and all the other things and providing the resources so that when I do want to bear down on the pain and make something useful out of it, I can hopefully channel it into productive self-improvement. So thank you.
Appreciate you. Cheers.
Thanks, Stephen. What's up, other gentlemen here? Jason, Josh, Sky. Anybody want to chime in? We got another 10 minutes or so. If somebody wants to pop in with a question.
I can go ahead.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going? First of all, thanks once again for your time. I'm probably about halfway through your book so far. I was reading a lot of it last couple days. Just had some work come up, but yeah, actually, I think you mentioned earlier, like men come in different flavors. You know, masculinity is different. I can definitely resonate with that. I would say I definitely resonate with a lot of femininity just in reflecting back on it. My mom by far was the one who had the most influence on me growing up. She was in a really bad car accident when I was 4. I didn't know if she was alive or not here anymore. And then, what's interesting though is that I'm now. You mentioned that you worked in acupuncture. I'm studying to be trained to be a counselor. Which also can often be associated with like very delicate femininity. And even in my program, the ratio of guys to girls is like 1 to 6. So I'm finding myself in this interesting, and then on top of that, I mean, just to throw this out there too, there's also a lot of gender non-binary individuals, individuals who identify as gay, bi. So it's a very interesting kind of collection of people. And I think as a as a cisgender heterosexual male who also has had a lot of feminine influence, I'm now realizing that I want to step into my leadership, but I'm also still surrounded by like my colleagues are all women. And it's kind of this weird, I'm reading your book and I'm saying to myself, I want to step into my prime. I want to do all this. But it's like most of my day, it's like, because of this idea of like Me Too movement, it's like, well, what if I do that? Then I might be seen as the toxic male, And even when I speak, sometimes I have to kind of, we even talk about a lot of my program. It's like, I really clarify, like, I'm speaking as a man. I understand that you might see it differently. So I was just wondering if you could speak to like environments like that. But also balancing like that primal side, because I think for me, especially, I want to step into that more. I think this pandemic actually kind of made me realize, I used to be terrified of, like, I remember when I was younger, I used to be terrified of like going, like traveling places that I wasn't familiar with, or when I was a little kid going to like theme parks, I was afraid of roller coasters. And now I'm like, I was afraid of surfing. You mentioned you like surfing. And now I'm like, why not? Fuck it. Like, why not try surfing? Why not do it? So with all that being said, I don't know if whatever you could speak to.
Sure. I appreciate you sharing like that. And I remember acupuncture school was like, I think 70-1, right? It was just super female dominant. And I was probably one of 3 straight guys in there. I have one friend who I would go watch football with, and that was it out of the entire school. And so what I think you need, and this is very common, right? It's men working in perhaps more feminine environments, or the opposite, women who call and say like, hey, I'm the CEO of a company. I'm in a boardroom all day. How do I tap back into my feminine side? And so for men specifically, I will always direct you back to nature. Spend time in nature. It's not toxic. It's not violent. Like, you know what I mean? It can be, but it's holistic. It's healthy. So many times when we think the primal, it's like, I got to be in a cage fighting a guy. I got to be like a lumberjack. I need to be at the gun range. And you don't. It's really just being in nature. And then finding some, what's the best way to put this? More potent containers. So if we want to balance you out, right? You're in this beautiful feminine container all day. That was your default setting from your mother. So it's more comfortable for you on some levels. So one of the ways to really tap into the masculine part of you is just Jason, to challenge yourself. Like, so you learning to surf is going to tap it. It's going to call upon that warrior archetype, right? You don't have to be out warring. I mean, you learning to golf would tap into that warrior because it's new, it's scary. It's something that's like, it's got a little bit of adrenaline going. Run a 5K, do something like that. That's very physical. I said, like, I fought an Olympic lift all through acupuncture school. And that's how I stayed sane, because it was such a highly condensed feminine environment that I needed to find highly condensed masculine environments to balance it out. Now, if I was in like some other company that was 50% men, 50% women, I don't know if I would have needed to do that hardcore stuff. And again, I'm not saying it has to be hardcore and that it's aggressive and all that, but you hiking a mountain, you going and getting lost for 5 hours in the woods, you just get into that little thing coming up that's like, I got to take care of myself here. I'm a little bit challenged here. I think that's the best way to stay in touch with it. And you're in a group. You've literally done the best thing you can do, which is be around other men. And when the pandemic opens and you can do it live, I highly recommend that as well. And don't shame that feminine part of you, right? If you're going to be a counselor, you're going to be.
The thing about that too is I might even do like a paper on this. A lot of men who come to counseling don't stay in counseling, or they don't even go to counseling because of the stigma. And I think, I think that's where, like, I have, Soma has been incredible as like a coach, and I also have some other people I know who are coaches. I'm wondering like what is it about, like, what are ways, how can coaching and counseling work together, especially for men? Or whether, part of me is like, do I want to think about coaching as a way to address men better? Because maybe counseling maybe it is too maybe feminine sounding, at least on the outset.
I'm going to look real quick. What's his name? Quentin Hafner. So a guy named Quentin Hafner wrote the book, The Black Belt Husband. And I interviewed him. He's a male counselor. And he was like, do you know why men don't do well in counseling? And I was like, no. It's like, because 99% of the people they're talking to are women. And why do you think men don't stay in counseling? Because they have to open sentences with, first, let me apologize for being a cis, white, gendered, male, non-toxic. I know I've done bad shit. I'm super sorry about that. So what do you guys think about what happened on page 7? And it's just like, how dare you speak? You know, you are the enemy. They feel attacked in their natural environment. But I will tell you, brother, men will go to counselors who are men. Men will also seek out coaches. I called that therapist, that Jungian therapist for the year. He's like, you're the only client who calls me coach. I was like, well, I've had coaches my whole life and I don't know how to do all of this emotion shit you're teaching me. So you're like a coach to me. I also have worked with a number of my good friend, Michael Gay, if you know him, did a couple podcast interviews. He is a brilliant therapist and is now starting to unwind from his therapy practice and do more coaching. He's like, I'm allowed to do more stuff. I have a little bit that my scope of practice is opened. But yeah, brother, like every time I have a question I don't know how to handle with a client, I call him like, hey, from a therapist perspective, what's going on here? So he has this beautiful foundation of training that I just don't. So I think that is a brilliant 1-2 combination. I know that's maybe a longer term thing, but men need you, man. We need I say this on just about every podcast, every interview. I'm like, guys, go to therapy. And yet
I wouldn't have done it. I mean, you talk about even in the book too, growing your garden from your wounds. I mean, I went to therapy as a kid because of what happened in my mom, and then later on in high school with, you talk about these civilized guys. That was my baseball team in high school. It does feel like, it just feels like I'm addressing that where I was, it was initially painful is actually where how I want to give back to the world.
Jason, what is your athletic practice now, or your physical practice?
Yeah, well, you mentioned hiking. I've been doing a lot of hiking. I'm in the Los Angeles area, so a lot of good hikes. Actually doing that a lot. With my brother, I have 2 brothers. My family as well. I play tennis on and off. But to be honest, I used to ski a lot, but I haven't done that in like 3 years.
Okay.
I almost went. My uncle was like, "Oh, I might go skiing in Colorado, actually," and I was like, COVID, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about, like, I've been interested in like martial arts. I played baseball in high school, but I guess I still feel like there's a lot more room to grow in that area.
Yeah. I would look at the sports you just listed and say, I would push you into something that's a little more challenging.
Okay.
Either surfing or martial arts. Great. Make sure there's a little bit of a combat element. So boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, rather than karate, Kung Fu, something that's more performance related. Weightlifting, CrossFit, if it's taught really, really well, right? Something that's going to actually just challenge your masculine width. That's the right word, right? Tennis is a beautiful sport. Hiking is a beautiful sport. I doubt your adrenaline's not up in it, right?
Well, no, there's even like this girl I've been seeing on and off, and we play tennis. But it's like when we play, I'm like, I'll be honest, like, she's getting back into it. I played when I was younger. It's not competitive at all.
Okay.
It's like really, we're like social distance, and then that's a whole other story. But yeah, I see what you're saying though. It's not really tackling like that hardcore with stuff, and yeah, I mean, even weightlifting, I do weights on and off, but I still feel like I'm only hitting like the tip of the iceberg with it.
Yeah. And surfing is amazing. It's natural. It's terrifying. It's also beautiful. It's meditative. I think every man should know how to surf. You're out in the ocean. It's going to get your adrenaline up. It's a little bit tribal. It's also just beautifully fun. But I would love to talk to you 6 months from now when you were like, my adrenaline has gotten to get up 3 times a week for the last 6 months. It has shifted me this way. It'll also allow you to speak to the more primal man when you are a counselor.
Definitely.
Of like,
All
I
right. Well,
get
I'll
you.
keep you
I get
posted.
you.
I'm following on Instagram, so I'll
Beautiful.
send you a DM in 6 months.
Awesome, brother. I appreciate you.
Very cool. I love that challenge. And, you use the tribe. A lot of you guys made commitments for the new year, right? So you can chalk that up to your commitments and use the tribe to hold you accountable, Jason, if that's something you're ready to take on. Cool. We're about at time here. I wish we had a little more time for the last couple of guys, but I really appreciate you, Traver, for showing up, for sharing your wisdom, your
Thank
time,
you.
energy. Um,
Thank you for having me.
yeah, absolutely. Your book is really a gem. For somebody that writes, I love your way of putting things, your perspective, your way with words. It's really
Thank you.
really cool. Um, is there anything that you want to share? Any offerings that you're putting into the world that you want to share with the tribe? Definitely going to post links with the video in our private social network community. But if there's anything else you want to drop in here, it's a good time for that.
The things I have coming up, I'm going to be releasing a Kill the Nice Guy course pretty soon in the next couple weeks. And that was the thing, Soma, that I was like, all right, you guys email me about this 5 times a day. I should probably get some kind of offering into the world around it. So that's coming. I have a workshop coming out in June. If guys are comfortable, COVID comfortable, I'm running it with Dewey Freeman and Michael Gay. We may have some equestrian aspects of that, but I'm going to do it in a safe way. It's very outdoors. It's very open. I'll have more information as that comes out too. I think that's really what's missing now is just all of us sitting in a circle. I don't give a shit if we're 5 feet away or we're 6 feet away, but just realizing that there's like live men to our left and right. So I'll be, if you guys follow me on social media, I'll be whoring that out deeply in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that too.
Very cool. Yeah, I think the kill the nice guy piece that's going to be a big one. We actually had Robert Glover
Oh,
in
cool.
here months ago, and yeah,
Yeah, that book was the one of the bricks, huh? I was like, oh, did you write this for me? Like so many times, it's just like, how did this guy know my life? Oh, and it was so angry. Like, fuck, why didn't I get this? And why wasn't like, again, I pick on the Pythagorean theorem all the time. I learned it in high school. I've never used it. Yet no one ever sat me down and was like, you may be a nice guy. You should read this book. At 18, that would have been, God, my 20s and 30s would have been a lot different. So yeah, awesome.
yeah, cool. Looking forward to that course. All right, man. Well, thank you so much again.
Cheers, guys. I appreciate you. Thank you for having me in, Soma.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Take care.